Hello, and welcome back to the Intuition Activation Podcast. I'm Jessica Rachel, a spiritual medium and intuitive coach, and I'm so happy that you're here to join me on this intuitive development journey. And I'm so excited to be back here recording another episode for you guys this week. I actually do have little Benny, the little baby, in my arms. And so if you do hear any squealing or other little sounds coming from this little guy, it's because I am holding him in my lap as I'm recording here today. And always happy to have a good recording buddy. But I'm so excited for this week's episode because last week, as I mentioned, my whole family was sick and I was struggling for inspiration, for ideas for the next few episodes of the podcast. So I posted on my Instagram stories and I polled you guys asking what it is that you wanted to hear on the show. And I'm so grateful that so many of you answered this question and participated. And so this has been the inspiration it was the inspiration for last week's episode, which was all about archangels. And I hope you enjoyed it. And this week's episode, I'm pulling out of that archive as well, or pulling out of those answers as well. So the second most popular request from you guys was an insight to the behind the scenes of a spiritual guidance session or reading for me. So how do I prepare for a session? What does it look like and feel like to do a reading on my end? What does it feel like for me? And kind of just the ins and outs of sort of pulling back the curtain on a spiritual guidance session. And then in addition to that, sort of what types of questions do people ask me or ask their guides rather? What kind of questions can you ask your guides? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to sprinkle in that people have keep asking me what are some of the craziest stories or advice that people have received from their guides that actually came to fruition. So I'm going to do my best to share some of that with you guys at the end of this episode as well. So be sure to stick around because there's some pretty wild stories that I'm excited to share with you guys. So I'm going to do my best to share this sort of insider look of what a spiritual guidance session looks like from my perspective, from the one who's doing the readings. And before we do that, though, I do want to announce that I originally had said I was going to be on maternity leave until almost the end of July, and I am announcing that I'm actually going to be coming back a little bit earlier than that. One, because I miss you guys and I miss channeling for you, but also because I've been getting a lot of emails from a lot of you guys lately needing some emergency sessions. It feels like things are shifting. A lot of people are going through some big, both spiritual, personal sort of up levels at this moment and are really in need of a lot of support and guidance from their guides. And I don't want to postpone that for you. I feel like if there's an opportunity for you to have spiritual growth and you're sort of experiencing sort of an identity crisis or a spiritual crisis, that you can have access to your guides and get the really specific, detailed information that you need from your guides at this time. And so people who have been emailing me asking for emergency sessions, go over to my website at jessicarachel.co and you can click under my name and see that there is some availability now for the end of June and also for the beginning of July. I've opened up a few more slots for you guys in case you really need that session and don't want to have to wait until I come back off maternity leave. I'm coming off early just for you guys. And also I miss you guys. I feel rested, and thankfully this baby's a pretty decent sleeper in the evenings. And so I feel rested enough to be able to get back into it. And I can't wait to reconnect with all of your guides together. So definitely head over to my website and sign up for a session if you're needing one sooner than later. I look forward to seeing you again very soon. So let's dive back into the episode. And I'm so excited to share this one because I get asked this a lot, but I also feel like it's going to be so helpful for you to sort of see how my setup works for those of you who are developing your intuition, what it actually looks like and what I'm thinking and the thought processes that I go through as I'm channeling for somebody else. And I want you to see that it's not all smoke and mirrors, right? It's really not so different from everything we've spoken about in terms of creating your practice and developing your intuitive abilities. I do much of those same things. in order to sort of prepare and dive into a session. And I'm also going to pull back the curtain a little bit on what it looks and feels like for me when I'm receiving messages from guides. And sort of and I'm hoping that maybe you'll recognize some of the things that I'm describing in yourself, and that maybe that's your experience and you didn't recognize that or identify that as channeling. And because channeling can sometimes be, it is an art, an intuitive art, I would say, that you really have to be able to identify these subtleties that are coming through in your mind as channeling, right? A lot of the times we think we're not channeling when really we are. We just didn't recognize it as that. So I'm going to do my best to really kind of be very specific and detailed on what it looks and feels like when a message comes through, so that you can maybe identify that for yourself when you're trying to connect with your own guides or guides for other people. So I do want to talk a little bit about the process. So a lot of people ask me, how do I get prepared for a session? What do I do in order to get ready? And I'm going to be totally honest with you, not much. And this has changed over time. When I just started my business, there was definitely a lot more nerves when it came to channeling. So I definitely had a lot more of a ceremony to it. There was a lot more that I did in preparation. Now that I have 2 kids and there's a lot of working pieces, to me, just having that undivided attention to offer my client, it usually looks like me handing a child off to either a babysitter or my husband when they come home like 5 minutes before the session, and me running up into my office to get ready. So it's not this crazy long. I sit in meditation, I get centered, I get grounded. I wish I could say that I had all the time in the world to do those things before I jump on with a client, but honestly, as I'll talk about later, it happens a little bit during my session with the client, of the grounding and getting ready. And so it really kind of looks like my husband coming home about 5 to 10 minutes before I have to jump on with the client. I hand the babies off to him, and I'll get dressed. I'll get my makeup on, not look like a mom who's, wearing her sweats all day. And I'll hop on and come into my office. Now, the first thing that I'll do is to sort of I still do something to sort of get grounded and get centered. And what I will do is light my palo santos. So I've talked about this. They say that palo santos is a very spiritual plant. It's actually a tree, and you can light it. It has a very beautiful aroma, and I find it to be a lot more less intense than sage, I guess I would say. And so I will light that and kind of use that as my way of calling in the guides, getting centered and getting grounded. Using scent, I find, is always the fastest way for me to get grounded and centered, because it just sort of, connects and reminds your whole body to just drop in. It's time to channel. It's time to settle in. So I will light my Palo Santos. Once in a while, I will feel called to grab a crystal of some kind. I don't have a huge collection of crystals. I have about two, I think 2 or 3 in my office. And sometimes I'll feel called to pull one of those. I have a couple on my shelf. Maybe I'll pull one off the shelf, and hold it or put it in front of me while I'm channeling. And it doesn't happen often, but when I do have that feeling of like, oh, I'm going to need a crystal this time, maybe to amplify the experience, usually it's the color tends to correlate with the aura of that client. So maybe it's just something I'm sensing that's needed to sort of help amplify the energy of that client. And sometimes I don't need a crystal at all. It just depends on how I'm feeling that day. So I'll grab a crystal or not and stick it on my desk in front of me. And then sometimes I will go over the form of the client that the client filled out. So if you have signed up for a session with me, I have a little form that asks sort of what are you hoping to get out of this session? What's your intention? What are you hoping to ask your spirit guides? And so I sometimes like to read that over and just sort of get a gauge on what that person is hoping to get out of their session. Are we going to be focusing on career or love life or purpose? And honestly, I check in with the client again about that anyways, because sometimes from the time you write that form to the time you actually see me, it could have been a whole month. And so sometimes what's on the form becomes irrelevant anyway. So I don't always check it. But I will check it at some point, but just not right before necessarily. And I'll be honest, I don't like to know too much about the client before I come into the session, because I really want to be as objective as possible. I don't want to be forming my own opinions or ideas about, whatever the circumstances that you're asking your guides about. I just want to be a pure and open channel. I don't want any of my ideas to be infiltrating your session. I really want it to be clear. I want it to be coming through spirit. And so, sometimes I choose not to check the form on purpose, because I know that I don't want my judgment to be clouding the information that comes through from spirit for them. And so, usually the first time I'm meeting you, it's a very cold call. Like, I've never seen you before. I don't even know where you're from. I don't know how you know me, right? Or where you heard about me from. Although I will see that on the form if you've been referred by another client. I like to keep it in a way that I don't know too much, because in some cases, it can sometimes make me a little bit nervous if I know who you are. And I think that there maybe are some expectations that you might have, or, if your friend told you that they had the most amazing life-changing experience and they're expecting the same thing, I can get in my head and it can put some pressure on me. So the less I know, the better, honestly. But I like to have that form just in case, there's something very specific you need me to know before we jump on. And so then we'll do that. And I will say, in some cases, it's been better that I didn't know. I've had, some clients who were, I, this sounds like bragging, but, somewhat famous or notable of some kind. And thankfully, I actually didn't know who they were until after the session was over, when I then went and Googled them and went, oh, I thought they looked familiar. And I think, had I known leading up to the session, like it was that I was going to be channeling for, I think I would have been a lot more nervous. I think I would have put a lot more pressure on myself, and I wouldn't have been able to be as clear of a channel because I would have been anxious. And so, again, like I said, it's almost better that I don't know. My husband says sometimes it's kind of good that I don't know much about pop culture. I don't tend to watch a lot of TV or movies. And so when actors or actresses do come my way, I don't usually know who they are, or people of note of any kind. I don't really keep up with the news. And it's almost better that way, that I don't know who they are, because then the information just comes directly for them without any preconceived notions that I may have had about them. Not that that happens extremely often, but it has happened a couple of times where I didn't realize till after the call who that person was. And again, I think it's better that way. So anyways, then I will hop on the call with the client. So I'll welcome you, I'll say hello. And I always do give the client a little bit of a rundown of what to expect. I'll tell them, that we're gonna do a meditation. I tell them that I'm gonna call your spirit guides in. I tell them that I'm gonna call in for protection. And I give this spiel and this little rundown so that you as the client don't get nervous when I start to call spirits in, right? For some people, this is brand new and they don't know what to expect. And, your heart can start pumping if somebody calls spirits into the room. You can feel a little nervous. So I need you to know nothing's coming into the room. And sometimes people get nervous when I call in for protection, because they kind of go, what's she protecting us from? And I always tell my clients, I'm calling in for protection. Yes, because spirit guides can sometimes be very excitable, right? They get very excited, and they do want to kind of jump in and give me too much information all at once. So I do remind spirit to calm down. But I also want to make sure that we're protected from anything that's out there that you could be calling in. And I can say honestly, I've never had a negative experience where I've had sort of a spirit with sort of malintentions come in. I've never really had an experience like that. But I'm not going to say that it's not possible. I just don't know. And that's why I call in for protection, to make sure that nothing kind of untoward kind of comes in as we're dealing with spirits. And in my opinion, everything is sort of neutral, and it's us humans who make something out to be good or bad. And so if there's ever been sort of an understanding of a spirit who has, someone thinks there's a bad spirit or voodoo or all of those things, those superstitions that come through, usually and oftentimes they're neutral, and it's humans who are deciding that it's a good or bad. Usually it's a lost soul, right? Or a soul who's a little bit, enthusiastic, I guess is what I would say. And so I have experienced souls who definitely have bigger personalities. I've never experienced a soul that had in a negative way. And thankfully for that. And so, but either way, when I do call for protection, I do want people to know, like, there's no superstition here. There's nothing that I'm fearful of, and therefore you shouldn't be fearful either. Again, to help keep everybody calm in the moment. And so I kind of tell them that. And then I will also take some time to ask the client sort of what they want to make sure that we ask their clients. And I do this for two reasons. One, I find that, I want to make sure that we cover everything you came here for in the time we have together. But secondly, because even though we haven't formally called the guides in, your guides are always with you and they're listening. And they are part of the conversation before we invite them into the conversation because they're there protecting you no matter what. And so when we do this, that know that your guides are listening, and this kind of helps facilitate the conversation that when we do open up the door, when we do call them in officially and formally, they can just start answering your questions right away. And sometimes guides will do that even during the meditation, they start answering me, and I have to be the one to tell them to hold it back and wait until we finish and call them informally. So they're listening, your guides know, and so they wanna hear what it is that you wanna know, and so they're very much part of that conversation that we're having before we've officially called them in. Which is really kind of fun, and it's fun for me when the guides sometimes get excited and start answering before we've even officially started. Yeah, so after we kind of do the questions, we do a guided meditation, and this guided meditation is for me as much as it is for the client, for you. And so, yes, I tell the client, this is gonna help get you grounded, it's gonna call upon healing energy, it's gonna make you feel really good, but it's also kind of my preparation, my way of getting grounded in the moment and getting settled and connecting to your energy and your energy field and your spirit guides. It's my way of calling them in. I always tell you guys that, one of the biggest things and most important things you can do when calling in spirit is to get centered and get grounded. Well, this is my way of doing it. And I do it together with you because I feel that it benefits you as well. But it definitely, I find that it amplifies my ability to get in the zone and my ability to channel. And so, we start by taking a few deep breaths, right? That helps me kind of get away from the hecticness that had probably just happened not 5 minutes before of handing off babies to caretakers and rushing to get into this office. And so it allows me to get centered and grounded. And then the meditation itself, I don't know ahead of time what the meditation is going to look like. I am channeling that meditation in the moment. I will tell you that I do have an overall structure that I do follow. But the details of that structure and what comes through within the details, I never know what's happening ahead of time. And so the general structure is that there's going to be some form of visualization of a beautiful place in nature. I don't know what that beautiful place in nature is going to look like until I have you sitting in front of me, because the guides are going to share with me sort of an imagery that's going to feel best for you, for the client, that you feel most grounding, or that your guides feel resonates most with your energy field, with your body. So the landscape that I start describing is whatever starts appearing in my mind after we take those few deep breaths. And it's usually we do 5 deep breaths. It's usually by the third breath that I start to see the imagery in my mind, the imagery of some sort of setting, some sort of scenery. And I will start talking and I will start sharing the details of this setting, and I'll sort of describe, what you see, what you hear, what you feel, as if we were placed in this space, in that moment. And the next sort of part of my meditation is I'll do some sort of cleansing ritual, right? Something washing over you, melting away any negative energy. So whether that's heat from a fire, melting it off of you, or water from a rain cloud or a waterfall pouring over you, it all depends on the setting that the spirit guides have placed us in, that will show me what's sort of washing off any of that extra negative energy that comes through. The next part of that meditation is some form of grounding. So I will always kind of say, imagine yourself placing your feet on the ground and either roots or cords of some kind coming out of your feet. Again, I don't decide until in the moment when I see, do I see a golden cord coming out of your feet, or do I see tree roots coming out of your feet? It's whatever the guide shows me and tells me to say in that moment. And so then we'll send some roots or cords down into the earth, to the center of the earth. And again, whatever comes up at the center of the earth to bring back up towards your body, to bring that healing energy back up to your body, is what I see in the moment. And so sometimes I will see a pool of healing water with a certain color, or I'll see a very large sort of life size crystal that's glowing a certain color, or I'll see like an orb of floating light, right? And then I'll see that cord of those tree roots that are connected to your feet wrapping themselves around that particular thing at the center of the earth and beginning to absorb that particular color, that particular energy, and bringing it back to your body. And that color is different for every person. It usually, what I've learned over the years is that that color that I start to see often tends to correlate with the color of the aura of your spirit guide, and or your own aura, right? The aura of the person I'm channeling for. And so there's usually, it's sort of me opening the channel. It's sort of me starting to get a gauge on your energy field and the energy of your spirit guide from that color that I see being pulled up from the center of the earth and poured in through your body. And so when I see that energy kind of coming up, and we say it's going to circulate through your body, it's going to travel up to the top of your head and down to your toes, I will start to feel those sensations as well. So I do feel tingling in the bottom of my feet, just as I'm telling you that you are going to feel tingling in the bottom of your feet as this beautiful color, this energy from the core of the earth comes up and through and into your feet. And then I'll say it's going to travel up to your head and, and down, and it's going to activate or vibrate your cells. And depending on the person in front of me, that energy, that healing energy is going to create a different outcome. So for some people, I'll be told to say, the guide will tell me to say, that it's going to wake up and activate, refresh and rejuvenate all of your cells. And then I'll feel like my whole body buzzing and humming and all of the cells buzzing and humming together. If that particular person in front of me maybe has had a very stressful week, or maybe they're really burnt out, I will be told to sort of say that the energy is coming through to relax and melt all of the cells. And so you'll feel this sort of ease and all of your cells melting into one another, and a sigh of relief that your cells are feeling, and everything kind of oozing and melting together, and your whole body just sort of relaxing. So there's a different energy that could come through depending on the person and what they need in that moment. And I get to experience that physical sensation in my body as well, so that now the two of us are resonating on the same level, and that we can start to, I can connect better to your energy field in your body as I'm channeling you. I'm feeling what you're feeling, hopefully. And if you're not feeling anything, the client, then I'm receiving, because I'm feeling it. I know that the energy is going through you, and that, that the healing is happening, right? I'm receiving confirmation through my own body that you are receiving this healing, whether you experience it or not. Although I would say that most of my clients do tell me they feel something, right? If not just completely relaxed in the moment. So that's what kind of happens in the meditation. Like I said, it's both. It's really for both of us. It helps me get centered and grounded. It opens up the portal. It starts connecting me to your guides. And usually at some point in the middle of that meditation, depending on how eager your guides are, I will start to see your spirit guide. Usually sometimes it's right at the beginning when I start to call in the nature scene, and sometimes it's while we're pulling the energy up. But at some point before I've even called them in, I will start to get a gauge, or at least a color, of your spirit guide's aura. And, so after we kind of do this little meditation, I call in the spirit guides. I ask them to come and join us. And then I also call in for protection. Then I start to see the guide. And this again is a bit of a process for me. And so for those of you who have had a session with me, you'll notice that I take a little bit of time to actually describe your spirit guide to you. And I will describe the color of your spirit guide's aura. I will describe sort of the personality that I'm starting to sense that they are having. And then maybe I'll start to pick out, or describe some physical characteristics, some details, right? The color of their hair, the outfit they're wearing, their eye color, if they're smiling, if they're moving around, all of these things. And I do tend to go into quite a bit of detail. And I do this for a couple of reasons. One, because I like to think that it's fun for you guys, you as the client, to kind of hear what your spirit guide looks like, at least from my view. But also, this is my process of opening up the channel and connecting more deeply to your guides. At first, I don't see all the details that I'm describing. At first, the only thing I see is a color. I'll see the outline of a person, right? Maybe I can sense male or female. But as I start talking and start describing what I'm sensing, that's when the details start to come clearer and come into view. So I don't see everything at first. It's not just like this clear picture that comes right to mind. I just see this outline and kind of start to sense. But when I start to then talk about it, I start to say they have this beautiful energy. They feel really loving and calming, or they feel really energetic and lit up. Then as I'm talking, more information comes through. Now I can start to see the color of their clothing. And as I describe it, as I'm describing the clothing, oh, now I can see the hair. As I start describing the hair, now I can see the eyes. And as I'm describing that, now I'm kind of getting more information. And so me taking the time to describe your guides is me sort of warming up the channel, so to speak. And the best way I can describe it is sort of the example of, a dirty faucet, right? A rusty faucet. When you turn it on at first, the water that's going to come out is kind of murky and muddy and ugly, gross water. But the longer you let it run, eventually the water runs clear, the water runs clean. So this is sort of my way of getting the water to run clear, of getting the channel to open up and see things a little bit more clearly. So I do take and not a significant amount of time, but I do take the time to start describing your spirit guide, to open up the channel, to create a much clearer and specific connection with your guide in that moment. And then the seeing starts to become clear in that moment. Now, after that, I always give the guides a few moments if there's anything that they need to share. And again, this is still me warming up and getting ready to answer your questions that you've come with. But I also find that spirit sometimes they have a little bit of a personality, right? Spirit guides are a little bit pushy. They definitely have an agenda. They have things they need you to hear. And their job is to help get you into your truest alignment in this lifetime. And so if there are things that they've been trying to get through to you for a long time and you just haven't been hearing it, or you haven't been listening or taking that advice, they are going to kind of word vomit all over me and kind of go, here are all of the things that I need you to know, that this spirit guide needs you to know, in order to be, feeling a little bit more in alignment, to be resonating on a higher frequency or your highest frequency, to operate as your highest self. And so spirit really kind of does this little like word vomit situation at the beginning where they're like, here are all the things I need you to know. And they're always about your present moment. They're always about, it's never about your future. It's never about your past. It's about what you are experiencing currently in this present moment and how you can optimize that. And so and especially if this is your main spirit guide that we're channeling, which most of the time it is. And so the first thing that your spirit guide will usually share, they're generally concerned about your overall energy field, your aura. And so they'll show me your aura, right? They'll show me the color of your aura, and they'll show me kind of where things aren't resonating, what's not working. And so right away they'll start to give suggestions of, how to sort of improve your mental state in that moment. So maybe they'll share with me, you've been burning the candle at both ends. You're really overwhelmed at this moment, right? You really need some rest or to take some time to yourself, right? Or they'll tell me that you're really bored right now and you need some excitement in your life and it's time to start playing and stepping into a different energy, right? Right. Or maybe you've been really boxed in and worrying about this one thing and it's time to sort of broaden your horizons, right? They'll usually give me something about your mental state. And the way that I see this one is kind of hard to describe of how I see it. It is images, but it's also more of a feeling of like, I just get the sense of this is what it feels like. It's almost like if the person was feeling overwhelmed, I'll start to feel overwhelmed, and then I know that that's what they're trying to share with me. It's also paired usually with an image of overwhelm of some kind, so head and hands or like clock ticking or things moving very quickly. But there's like sort of just this sense of they make me feel like, and you'll often hear me say that your guide makes me feel as if you're burning the candle at both ends. And again, a lot of the times when I'm channeling, people always say this about me when I'm channeling. They say, you talk so fast. How are you talking so fast? I almost feel like I have to talk fast because this is me taking a step back. This is allowing the guides to speak through me. So I don't give myself the time to process what's coming through. Because if I listened and heard, and then I took a minute to kind of go, is that what I think I heard? Should I say that? Is it true? Right? Then it's filtering it. And I don't want to filter. I just want the guide to speak. And so a lot of the times, as soon as the kind of impression comes, I just start talking, even if it's not a fully formed sentence. And as I speak, the rest of the information comes out and spirit sort of talks through me. I guess the best way, if we were to talk about any of the clairs, this is sort of claircognizance at its best or at work here, right? Me just talking before I even know what's going to be coming out, maybe coming from a feeling or a knowing, and just as I speak, I let it come through. And so this is, so usually we're sharing a little bit about your mental state. Your spirit guide is kind of saying, like, this is how you are in the present moment. Here's some things maybe that you can be doing to help with that, right? Maybe they'll tell you, like, you need to clear your calendar, right? Or they'll tell me you need to book a vacation, right? Whatever it is, that they're feeling, that you're experiencing in the moment. And they will show this to me also through your aura. So I'll see, if your aura is glowing really bright, or if there's sort of these black patches around it, or if it's a little duller or dimmer in certain places. And again, there's just sort of this knowing of if you're vibrating at your highest or you're not. And often if I see a client more than once, right, I'll see from the first time I saw them to the next time I see them, if they've started to take some of the advice of their guides, I can see a difference based on the dullness or the brightness of their aura in comparison to the previous time I spoke to them. So yeah, and that's how, again, a way sort of seeing if you're resonating and you're vibrating higher or lower, in a different frequency than you were the previous time. So it's interesting when I get to see you more than once. And so the other thing that they will tell you when they talk about your energy field is they'll kind of tell you right away, kind of what is going to fill your cup up, what you should prioritize in order to allow you to resonate at your highest on a daily basis. And so they'll tell you things like, for your body, the thing that fills up your cup or replenishes your energy the most is moments of quiet. So sprinkle in, 5 to 10 minutes of pure quiet by yourself, this many times a day. Or they'll say, for you, it's being by the water. Make sure to prioritize walks on the beach as frequently as possible. Or maybe it's immersing yourself in water. Take warm baths at the end of every day. They will give very specific details like this about what it is that is going to help you vibrate highest and be your highest frequency. And so they do tell me those things. So I know for me, my guides are always telling me that I need to take a shower at the end of the day. They're always telling me that I need to do this in order to sort of wash off the energy that I pick up. A lot of us empaths, right? We tend to be like Velcro, and we tend to pick up energy from a lot of other people. Anybody we've interacted with maybe have had little pieces cling on to us. And so if I don't take some time to have that shower at the end of the day and wash off that extra energy, especially if I'd been channeling for clients as well that day, then number one, it's going to affect my sleep. And number two, now I'm carrying all that extra energy with me and I'm not vibrating at my highest or feeling my best. So your guides will often give you something along those lines of something you need that's going to fill you up, that's going to help replenish, rejuvenate, and refresh your energy field so that you feel at your buzziest, your highest, your best vibration. And so they always like to share that with you. The next thing the guide will do is kind of offer me a little bit more about your physical body. So they're gonna sort of share, they'll do a little body scan on you. They'll kind of show me how your body is doing on a physical level. And this is kind of sometimes where, and then they'll tell me sort of if there's anything that needs to be optimized here. So if maybe you're low in a certain vitamin or a nutrient, or maybe you're dehydrated, or there's something you're eating that's not sitting well with you and you haven't realized it, or you're choosing to ignore it, your guide will let you know. And the way this comes up for me is that the guide will kind of do this body scan, right? And usually I'll ask permission before I do it. So I'll say, your guide wants to offer some physical health type advice. Can I do a body scan? And again, they'll kind of show me your aura, your energy field, and it'll kind of be like certain parts of your body will light up for me. Again, I'm very visual, so I see things lighting up. But more importantly, this is the part where I end up playing a bit of a guessing game with your spirit guides, because then your guide will start to show me images, just like flash one image at a time. So I'll give an example. Maybe I'll be scanning you and all of a sudden I'll see the image of a food like blueberries, for example. And then I'll have to sit there and kind of have a conversation with the guides, or have to guess, like, well, what does blueberries mean, right? Are they saying that you need more antioxidants and that they want you to eat more blueberries? Are they telling me that you have a sensitivity and you need to stop eating the blueberries, right? Are they telling me something totally different. And so this is where I'll even admit to the client, like, I'm seeing blueberries and I don't know why, right? I'm going to ask your guide what they mean by that. And then the guides will kind of start to speak and offer me more words, right? Sometimes they'll say, like, you need to detox, you need some antioxidants, maybe you need to go on a detox, right? More blueberries, more pomegranates, right? Into your diet, please, right? And I'm starting to build up a little bit more of a dictionary or vocabulary with guides when they tend to only flash one image in front of what do they mean by that particular image, especially when it comes to the body scan. And so, for example, it tends to be that a lot of us tend to be really low in magnesium, right? We sweat it out all day, and often forget to replenish magnesium for some reason. And so, the guides will show me an image of the specific bottle of magnesium supplements that I use, in an image to share with me that that individual is also low in magnesium and that they might want to consider either eating magnesium rich foods and or taking a magnesium supplement. For some reason, the guide is feeling they're low in magnesium. This is a common one that comes up, specifically the magnesium one. So now I know when I see that bottle of the supplement that I use, that's the guide trying to tell me in a way that I will understand that they need more magnesium. Another example they'll show me is they'll show me a glass of lemon water with someone sprinkling sea salt into it, or Himalayan salt into it. And that's their way of telling me that this person is dehydrated, that they're not drinking enough water, and if they are drinking enough water, perhaps their body's not retaining it well. And so this is their way of saying you're dehydrated and maybe you need some more electrolytes. So you need to up sort of the salts, right? The salts and minerals in your diet, and in your hydration, your way of hydrating. And so that one comes through quite a bit as well, right? A lot of the time people are just more dehydrated than they realize. And so guides are always letting me know, you're probably not feeling your best because you need more water and you need to have electrolytes in addition to just water. So that one comes through as well. Right. Sometimes they'll show me things like spinach, right? And they're kind of telling me you need more leafy greens, whatever it is. Sometimes they'll tell me, exactly kind of how your digestion works best. So they'll show me things like warm soups and cooked vegetables and telling me that maybe you have a very sensitive digestive system and you need to be, avoiding some of the raw and fresh and leaning more towards the warm and cooked and soothing foods, right? So they will, again, tell me what it is that's going to be optimal for your body to help you feel your best so that your mental state, your physical state is working at its best so that you can then go out and achieve and do the things that they're going to tell you to do as we start to answer your questions about your path and your purpose later on in the session. So that's kind of the beginning of every session that I have with a client, right? Kind of what your guide feels you need to know. They're going to kind of highlight your mental state, your physical state, and your spiritual state, and offer any suggestions that they feel is necessary to help you improve or optimize your present moment, essentially. And then we can start to kind of dive into the questions, the things that you came here to ask your guides. And sometimes I'll ask the client, like, which of your questions do you want to focus on first? But sometimes Spirit was listening and they just dive in and they start telling me the answers to the questions in the order that they want to answer it. So it really just depends on your guide. But a lot of people ask me sort of what kinds of questions do people ask their spirit guides? And this is the fun part. You can really ask your guides absolutely anything. It can be as broad as what is my path and purpose in life to as specific as what do I say exactly to my boss in my next meeting, right? Or what should my side hustle be? Or, you can really ask anything. You can ask your guides anything. Some of the common things and my favorite question, a lot of the reason that people do come to me to connect with your spirit guides and what your spirit guides are for is what is my path and my purpose in this life and how do I go about executing that, right? What am I supposed to do with my life? Why am I here? And so, that can take up a majority of a session, because that is what your guide is here to do, is to steer you in the direction of living your truest path, your truest purpose, and helping you explore the options that can help you achieve that goal. And so we can definitely focus on that. Some of the other questions people ask me that are always fun are what are the past lives that I've had, or things that I didn't learn from a previous life that are kind of coming up and presenting themselves as lessons in this life. lessons or experiences not had yet in previous lives that need to be played out in this one. Some people ask me about where am I blocked, right? Do I have inner child healing or childhood trauma that I'm not aware of, or maybe not aware of, but that I haven't fully healed yet? So we can look at that. And then we can look at even less serious things and more fun things. People ask their guides, where should I live? Where in the world should I live? And this one's an interesting one because when people ask me where should I live, the guides will never give me a specific country necessarily or a city. They'll usually show me a particular climate that your body resonates best in. So they'll tell me, your body does really well in a sunny place, usually by the water or on the beach, or they'll say your body does really well in the mountains, where it's a little bit overcast and cloudy, or your body does well when there's really distinct four seasons, right? So they won't necessarily kind of tell you like this city. They'll usually say like this climate, which is really interesting. And a lot of the times it has something to do with where your soul has spent the majority of its previous lives and what feels most at home to you. So I know for me, sunny climate, as much as I like to say I like warm weather, my body actually doesn't feel the best in the heat, and doesn't do well. I always feel my best when it's kind of overcast. I kind of like that, where it's not freezing outside, but it's kind of overcast. And having learned now that I've had many, many, many lifetimes in London, England, that makes a lot of sense. It's genuinely, generally quite overcast over there in London. And so that makes a lot of sense to me. And so, yeah, you can really ask anything. You can ask, what is my most aligned job? You can ask, do I have any spirit babies or children that want to come through, right? And what spirits are there? Spirits who have chosen me as mother or father that want to come through me? What children am I going to have? Some people ask me, who is my ideal spouse and how do I go about finding them? We can ask, if they're having a work crisis, what's the best way out of this work crisis? Do I quit my job? How do I best handle this conflict with this person, right? I'm having this big argument with my sibling. How do I best handle it, right? All of those things are types of questions that I get quite frequently. I also sometimes get a lot of people coming with business decisions they need to make, right? Do I get this investor or, make this big move in business, right? All of those things come through as well. And your guides will tell you what's most aligned and best for your business as well. So really you can ask your guides anything. And there really is um, there's no wrong question that you can ask your spirit guides. And so I always say, have fun with it. Ask what you most want to know. There's no wrong way to ask it, and there's no wrong question. So whatever's burning in the back of your mind that you've been dying to know about your life, ask your spirit guides because they're going to answer. And if they don't have the answer, I'll tell you, right? It's usually that it's not that they don't have the answer. Sometimes they feel you're not ready for it yet, or they're not going to give you the full answer. They'll give you pieces of it until you take a certain step, and then they'll give you the rest. But usually your guides will answer. So ask away is always what I say. And so I do want to describe a little bit about how the messages usually come through for me. And when we're asking questions, and a lot of the time it is kind of like images in my mind, like a movie flashing not before my eyes, in my mind, the same way that you kind of see your imagination. And so I start to sort of see these images, and as these images are coming through, I'll start to describe the images. And as I start talking, the information starts to flow. So that's sort of me using my clairvoyance and my claircognizance in tandem. Right? Not necessarily trying to interpret the images, but rather seeing the images as reinforcing whatever it is being said through me. And again, this is why I tend to talk so quickly while I'm channeling, because I'm just talking. I start to describe the images, and as I start to describe the images, spirit takes over and says the rest, and says whatever needs to come through. So often, I'll know I'm channeling because I'll be saying things that I never would have thought of myself, or if I were to attempt to interpret that image, it would have been a totally different message. So I don't attempt to interpret. I don't. I just start describing point blank what I see and let spirit kind of do the rest and just speak for me. And so this is usually what happens when I'm channeling. I really don't try to to analyze what's coming through, because this is where inaccuracies come, and that's me putting my own 2 cents in, and I don't wanna be doing that. So I really just it's sort of like an image comes, I start to describe the image that I'm seeing, and as I'm describing the image, then spirit takes over and finishes the sentence or finishes the sentiment or meaning of that image. And that's how I answer the questions. Um yeah, and sometimes, it could be if it's just a yes or no question, I will literally see the spirit shake their head no or nod yes. But usually it's more the questions usually require more than that. Yeah, so that's sort of what it feels like to be kind of behind the scenes of a spiritual guidance session with me. That before I sort of go, and I did promise that I would share a couple of the crazier stories that I've channeled or experienced when channeling for clients. So I do want to say that I don't remember a lot of them. And I know that I've been channeling and doing this for, almost 5 years now. And there's probably so many stories, but in the moment when I'm channeling, I take a step back. My brain isn't really there, right? I'm the mouthpiece, but I'm not thinking it through. So a lot of the times, once the session is over, I often forget what was said. And part of this is because I'm channeling for so many of you throughout the week. Like that's a lot of information to retain. And part of it is that when you're in the moment and it's channeled, it's coming through me, not to me. And so I don't always retain all of it. And so I'm going to do my best going forward to try and start to write down things maybe after sessions if there's particularly interesting stories so that I have them for you guys so you can hear the amazing stories that happen with clients. But I wish I could say I remember everything. I don't I always say that, if I don't recognize you in the moment, if we've had a session before, once I start channeling for you, I'm like, "Oh, I remember all of the details of our previous session." Once I'm tapped in, once I'm channeling because it all comes back. But if you're actually asking me in the moment, post channeling session, a lot of it kind of gets closed off when the portal gets closed off. But I'm going to do my best to share a couple of the ones that I do remember from previous sessions. So I'm going to share about 3 of them. So there's one where I had a client, and this was kind of near the beginning of me doing this as a business. And I had a client who she had a very normal, typical job. I can't remember if she was an accountant or she was in business of some kind. I knew she managed numbers or finances of something, but just like a very normal, like 9 to 5 desk job. And she really loves animals and she really loved animal photography. And that was sort of like a hobby of hers. But when she was checking in with me or with her guides about sort of what to do with the rest of her life. She said she's not really loving her job, but she doesn't know that she wants to leave it. It's pretty secure, but just wanting some more fulfillment in life. And the guides jumped in and shared like such a wild situation. And they kind of said, you are an animal medium and you're going to be channeling messages for animals and you're going to be traveling to these different animal rescue centers in places like Costa Rica, in Central America and South America, and they're gonna have you come and help, do energy healing on these animals and also channel for them and volunteer at these animal rescue centers all over the world. And that's going to be sort of, and your photography is maybe going to be involved in that, your animal photography, but it's more that you're an animal medium. And she told me later, because she became a friend of mine afterwards, she told me later that she had gotten off that call and went, that was ridiculous, right? What a waste of money. What a waste of time. Like, there's no way I'm going to be an animal medium and traveling to different parts of the world helping heal animals. Like, no, like I'm in finance, right? Like she was just like, that's crazy. But it just so happens that a year, almost to the date after that session, she sent me an email and said, that's exactly what I'm doing. Like I'm going with my husband and, a couple of friends and I'm going to Costa Rica and I'm going to be healing these animals at this rescue center. In between that time, throughout that year, she actually had taken my 12-week program. At the time, it was actually much shorter. It was a 4-week program at the time, but, and she had honed in and discovered that she did in fact have, animal mediumship abilities, that this really was her natural gift as a medium. And so, in between that time, she did actually learn about herself. But the first time she was like, this is crazy. Like, what are you talking about? I'm not a medium. But she did later on take my program and discover that this was in fact what she was quite good at doing, which was channeling for animals. And then she did get invited to an animal rescue center in Costa Rica to stay for a week and help with the animals and help, with, I don't know what, bring them back to health, I guess, is what they were doing. And she was channeling for them, and helping with energy healing with the animals and just helping volunteer at the rescue center in Costa Rica. So she goes, I can't believe that that came true. Like, you literally had said it was going to be in Costa Rica and that I was going to do this. And I thought you were crazy. And now here I am 1 year later, packing to go on my trip to Costa Rica. So that one still stands out as one of my most memorable ones, where I was like, I cannot believe that that actually came true. And that what her guides had said she was going to do is what she's now doing. So that one was really crazy. Another really memorable one. This is a client who actually has also been in my program now that I think about it. But this was one of our very first sessions together before she joined my program, that we were channeling her past life. Usually when somebody asks their spirit guides their about their path and their purpose in this life, usually guides will sort of show them a previous life of theirs that kind of shows some unfinished business that they had in the previous life that then transfers over to experiences that need to be had in this life. And so this particular client, we had discovered that in a previous life, she was an opera singer, I believe in the Paris Opera House. And they gave us a timeline. I can't remember now if it was the 1700s or the 1800s, but she was a singer in the Paris Opera House. And there was this whole story about it. But one of the things that came through when we were channeling was that she was sort of this headline singer, and what her debut opera was, or the first performance that she had when she finally headlined at the Paris Opera House. And so when she and I got off the call, we went and we researched who was, the date. We went and researched the date and that particular opera. And we were able to actually find who she was, like this person we were channeling about, that she was in fact this real person. She was this opera singer in the Paris Opera House, and that this was her first performance. And we found it. We found it on Wikipedia of all places. And then there were a couple of news articles about her as well, from that time. So we were able to discover this particular opera singer that neither of us had heard about before, because the name wasn't coming up in the session. We couldn't really get the name, but we did get where it was and the first opera that she did as her debut performance, and we were able to find her. So that was really cool that we were actually able to locate the actual person that she was historically, 200 years ago. So that one for me was also very, very cool. And I guess I'll share, I'm trying to think. There's one or two more that I would love to share. And so this one was a little bit more kind of just funny to me, I guess, because of what I heard later. And so this client, she was a venture capitalist, I believe is what you call it, where her job is to invest money into startup companies to, help grow their business, and then you kind of get a percentage of that. And so she was asking her spirit guides to share with her who are the next companies or startup companies that she should invest in. And her guides gave some very specific details of these up and coming businesses or these startup companies, that she should invest in. And they were very different companies, right? One was like the dessert company, and one was like a landscaping company, and they were all sort of women owned and whatever. There was like these very specific types of businesses. And she had told me later that she had gotten off that call kind of going, I don't know if I really believe any of that. Like, I guess we'll see. But she kind of felt like, whatever. Like, she didn't feel like it was such a life-changing session. She was kind of like, I don't know if those are really companies that I've ever heard of. I don't think I'm going to probably invest in them, like all of these things. And then a few months later, this client went to a retreat, a business. I don't know if it was a business retreat or a personal retreat, but she went on a retreat, and just so happened that she ended up meeting the founders of these exact companies that her spirit guides had described all of them were in attendance at this retreat. So all four of those companies, she met all of the founders in one place, like only a couple of months later. So naturally, she invested in them because, I mean, in what universe does that happen where you meet all of the things exactly as your guides described them? I can't say what happened to those companies. She hasn't told me if if they took off or whatever, but it would definitely a clear sign that she met all four of them in the exact same place, at one time, only a couple of months after her guides had described those exact companies to her. So that one was really, really cool for me to hear later down the road, especially when she kind of got off the call feeling a little skeptical or a little disappointed, and then to have that confirmed for her in real time, just a couple of months later, was really kind of fun to hear. Um, and then I have a last one, which is kind of a little bit more fun. I did have a client who was an actor and was asking sort of when what their next job would be, and whether they should which offer to accept, as sort of jobs came through for them. And the only thing I heard from their guide, I didn't know what kind of role it was going to be. I didn't know if it was going to be a movie or a TV show or what the role was going to be, but all I heard was that they should take the job offer that they get that films in London, England, and that more jobs would follow after they took that job. I guess they were having a bit of a dry spell at that moment. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure that job offer came through. I don't know if it was the next day or very quickly after. They then got a role that was filming in London, England, and they played a role. I believe it was in a movie in London, and so that one was kind of cool. Where I never claim to be a predictor of the future. I always say I just offer the advice that your guides are giving you. And I guess he was receiving multiple offers, and this one, it was sort of like, take the one in England or in London, and this is the one he took. And sure enough, he filmed some sort of something in London, and has since had things pick up for him. So that one was really cool as well. And so again, I don't ever claim to be like this predictor of the future. I just channel whatever it is that your guides feel is most aligned for you based on the decisions you're currently making. And know that if you don't follow the advice of your guides, they're always going to guide you back to your truly aligned self, even if it's more of a roundabout way. But definitely it's fun when the things that they share, if you do take their advice, and then, magical things happen afterwards. So it's always really fun when some of those stories come through. Um, yeah, so that's all I really have to share for today. Um, oh no, I do have one more. I have one more really fun one that I do want to share. This one actually happened quite recently, and this one I'm excited to share with you. So this was an author. She was a beautiful illustrator, an artist, and children's book author. And she said she had come to me and she said, I think she was coming to ask advice about from her guides about how to get this particular book published or which publisher to go with. I can't remember exactly what she was asking her guides, but what's so interesting about this session is I did as I normally do. I called in her guides and I start describing her spirit guide to her. And I give her, and it comes through in so much detail. And I start describing this beautiful guide who looks like a fairy. And she has fairy wings. And I say she has this beautiful kind of maroon colored dress, or like this kind of burgundy red. And I start describing her long, beautiful brown hair and these big, beautiful blue eyes and this really beautiful fairy. And I was like, your guide is coming through so clearly. It's such a beautiful fairy that I'm seeing. And so then the client goes, hold on, before we start answering the questions, can I show you the picture book that I created, that I illustrated? And I was like, absolutely, I'd love to see it. She runs into the other room, she grabs the book and she holds up the book. And what like the image is on every page was the exact fairy that I had just described to her as her spirit guide, literally across every single page. This is who the main character of the book was about, this beautiful fairy. And so that one was really, really cool. And she had told me she had felt like this book came to her, like it was almost as if she dreamed about it or as if she channeled it herself, and the imagery came through and like the art just flew out of her. And it was the most beautiful illustrations I'd ever seen. But it was so shocking to see in real life on paper the spirit guide that I was sitting there describing in that moment. And so that one was so fun for me. And as seasoned as I am as a medium, and I don't know how seasoned you can call me, it's only been a few years, but sometimes it's fun to sort of get confirmation like that in the moment of like, see, I'm not making this up, right? I didn't just imagine this spirit guide in my mind. Like, there she is in paper, and this person, made a beautiful illustration about it and created a whole children's book about this beautiful spirit guide who has been guiding her through the process of creating this children's book. So that one was so wild for me to see the actual fairy on a page exactly as I had just described it several minutes before. So that one was really, really wild for me as well, and quite a fun experience for the artist too. So that was a really, really fun one. So again, I'm going to try my best in future to start taking better note of some of the crazier stories that happen when I'm channeling spirit, because I'm sure they're really fun to hear. And it's nice to know like there is magic out there, and it's really fun to hear about this magic as it's happening. It gives you a little bit more faith in life for sure. So I'll definitely do my best. And if you had a session with me, if you're out there listening to this podcast and we had a session together and something that your guide said did come to fruition, or you took the advice and your life was better for it, please send me an email or message me on Instagram at I am Jessica Rachel. I would love to hear about it, but more importantly, I'd love to have you on the show and have you share your story, because it's one thing coming out of my mouth. It's another thing getting to hear it from the individual themselves. So if you have a story that came through from a channeling session that we had together, please, please, please reach out to me. I would love to feature you on the show. Anyways, that's all I have to share for today. I hope this was interesting and fascinating for you. It was definitely fun for me to create this episode this week. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your week and your weekend. Be sure to like and subscribe and download this podcast so that even more people can hear it. And please give us a 5-star review again, so that even more people can find us. And that's it for this week. Have a beautiful one. Bye, guys.